Everyone. It's just another day in the life as a military wife, and I, on my week off, ran into some interesting articles about military retention, which kind of surprised me considering the response to Top Gun Maverick. There's been such a great response, and everyone's saying it's going to be a wonderful recruiting item. It was interesting to see that the multiple branches of the military were struggling with their recruitment during this year. And why and what are some of the things they've been doing and how is that going to affect the armed services in general. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you're listening to Life of a Military Wife. Let's talk about this. Basically, I looked at multiple different articles, and from what I was seeing in these articles, it was showing that Army recruitment was at 40% for that fiscal or recruitment year. And that might not sound bad because we're halfway through the calendar year. But when you take into account that the recruitment year ends in September, 40% is really not where you want to be in July. And so that is why the Army has taken some drastic measures and changed some policies. Now, it's not just the Army that is dealing with recruitment shortages. The Navy is also. I didn't see anything about where the Marines or the Air Force stood on their recruitment levels, but basically there seems to just be a lower overall recruitment this year. And there can be a lot of different factors at play involved with this. But basically, we're going to talk about the policy changes first. Policy changes that they pursued was less strict on tattoos. Maybe you don't know this, but when you enlist or join the military, they have restrictions on where you can have tattoos, what kind of tattoos you can have, how many tattoos you can have, what size they can be. And so they've made some changes. Basically, you can now have tattoos on each hand as long as they're no bigger than 1 inch by 1 inch square. And you can have tattoos in between your fingers, which just sounds very painful, as long as you can't see the tattoo when your fingers are closed. And there was some other stuff, and I'm sitting there going, okay, well, that's fine. The other one that they have done is really pushing bonuses. Bonuses are up in general. For anyone that could ship in 45 days, they were, regardless of MOS, they were giving out bonuses for people who were going with special forces or intel or something specialized. They had even bigger bonuses. The Navy has been pushing bonuses too. But the thing that got the most attention, and this is really what a lot of the articles were focusing on, was at the end of June, beginning of July, anyway, for a week, end of June-ish, there was a drop. They dropped completely the GED or high school diploma requirement. And that was a huge shock and caused a huge uproar, not just in the military community with military leadership, but in the population in general. I don't think people realize that this has happened before. This is actually not an uncommon policy shift. I believe it happened back in 2008, but basically it's happened before. We've made these exceptions in the past, but I think it really surprised people because people didn't realize how bad the recruitment situation was this year until that happened. That really put a spotlight on it. And the other reason, so the basically what they're saying is you don't have to have a high school diploma or a GED to get in. And you still have to take the ASVAB, and you have to get a higher score on the ASVAB than people who graduated. So if you graduated, I believe it's like a 33 or 38 or whatever, it's a pretty low score if you have a high school diploma. That the minimum score is really rather low. The minimum score for someone without a high school diploma or GED is 50 for the ASVAB. And the ASVAB is the military entrance exam. Basically, it's a standardized test when you get into the military to determine what your basic knowledge and education and intelligence level, mostly knowledge and education level are, so that they know what jobs you would qualify for and which ones you wouldn't be qualified for. Um, and anyway, so you have to have at least a 50 on the ASVAB and you have to agree to get your GED during your first enlistment. And that was super controversial, like I said before. And the reason why that is controversial, and there was multiple people in these articles. One of them was with the Army Times. Um, so yeah, go look at the Army Times article. But anyway, retention and discipline tend to be the biggest issues with individuals with these waivers because um, a lot of them don't end up getting their GED in their first enlistment, and so they wash out, or they just wash out of basic in general, or their discipline issues. So that is a huge problem or concern with leadership about these sorts of things. And then it's also important to look at why they didn't finish high school because several of the experts and people that were asked about it, they said that the reason why they didn't finish is almost as important as them finishing, due to the fact that if they didn't finish and there's really no reason, like they had a supportive family, they lived in a good community, they had transportation to and from school, they just didn't bother to do the work, that is a large indicator that they're probably going to have, issues completing their GED due to lack of motivation or maybe discipline issues. In turn, there are individuals who, due to lack of family support or poor home environment, homelessness, or other situations, have to drop out to provide for themselves and are incapable of finishing their high school diplomas because of those situations and do not have the sufficient income to get a GED. That said, I actually can understand that perspective because I have a family member, and this is like a generation or two back. Um, in my family, a certain member of my family that married in, he had issues with his home environment, ended up running away from home because it was a less than ideal situation. Um, now this I don't recommend, was less than honest about his age. I don't even know if they asked his graduation status, but he hadn't finished high school. Joined the Navy, and this was during the Korean War, so honestly, they were taking everyone. Um, so maybe they didn't bother to verify, who knows. But he fought in the Korean War, fought in the Vietnam War. He stayed in and well past retirement, ended up working. He was in the Navy, ended up working with the Air Force after retirement. Um, Went very high up in the ranks, and I'm not completely sure, but I think he was like E9 when he got out. Very successful, very dedicated, wonderful family man. I totally look up to this family member. He was like a dad to me as a kid. And so I can see how there will be exceptions to that rule, but at the same time, I can, if they have a track record. There is a track record of a lot of the waiver people, just the individuals with waivers, not fulfilling the requirements that they've agreed to in getting their GED or washing out a basic. So it's a catch-22. And I think it's interesting that when asked how many individuals were given that waiver during the space of 1 week, there was a no comment. Basically, they're not disclosing how many people slipped in. So, we'll see, honestly. Like I said, individuals who there's why they didn't finish is just as important. So that's my 2 cents on that. But also the numbers were just, why are they low to start with? Why are we having such a struggle with recruiting? Like I said before, I was shocked because every review I've heard, everyone I've heard talk about Top Gun Maverick is like, this is going to be great for recruiting. Maybe it came out too late. If it had come out in May, Maybe recruiting would have picked up sooner. I don't know. Maybe if it had come out in February, recruiting would be doing better. I have no idea. But hopefully next year won't be as bad because, yeah, Top Gun Maverick. But you already know how I feel about that movie. So the main issues that I saw, and I was actually in one of the military news articles cited an NBC article, and I went and started reading this article, and I was kind of surprised because it covered something that I had never thought. Well, it just wasn't what. If you looked at all the military conversations, they were all along different lines. And it was interesting that the NBC News had a different angle, and their angle was that recruitment was low because millennials and Gen Z are afraid of being physically and emotionally damaged by military service. And I was really kind of shocked by that. I understand when you join the military, there are sacrifices that you make. I mean, nearly everybody has some wear and tear. It's the nature of the beast, but a lot of the careers have mental or physical wear and tear that are associated with them. And so the fact that that was such a large concern was kind of surprising to me. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it is. Um, but evidently they were saying due to this, it was something like 57% of individuals that they surveyed were worried about that. And I'm like, that is statistically significant. That is quite a bit. And only about 7% said that they were even inclined to look at the military forces. Um, which yeah, that is really drastic. And I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, there is mental and physical wear and tear that comes with being in the military services. And that's something you need to understand going in. But just because you're joining the military, not everyone's getting stuck on the front line. Not every like the level of mental and physical wear and tear varies drastically depending on what your job is, your specific job is in the military. The other thing that I saw on on just in some of the conversations and different things was there's also, oh yeah, NBC, sorry. Go back to the one last thing NBC pointed out. There was also a lack of confidence in the government in general, according to what NBC found in their studies or their, anyway, surveys, not studies, surveys. Anyway, but honestly, I can kind of see that considering the way the situation in Afghanistan, which I have talked about pretty openly, was handled. I can see why parents with young kids who are 19 and 18 would be concerned because a lot of the individuals who died, the 13 service members that died, were rather young. Um, would be concerned with them joining up instead of going to college. College looks a lot safer after the situation that happened in Kabul with those 13 servicemen and women. So I, yeah, I can see that lack of confidence that really was a blow, and for a lot of people in confidence. The other one was I feel like because of the pullout from Afghanistan and just the way things are, there's a lot less clear enemy. A lot of these young people, the only enemy they've ever really known was the Taliban, and like it was this whole, they grew up post 9/11. They grew up with a clear and present, bad guy in their minds. There was this person, they attacked us, we are doing this because of that. It was very cut and dry for so long. And now we are hitting a more, because of the pullout from Afghanistan, because of the changing dynamics on the world stage, the enemies are a lot less obvious. They're a lot less cut and dry and clear. And so maybe the urgency to join is not as prominent. Maybe the concern for the safeties of their country and for representing and protecting those freedoms is less prevalent. Um, and so I can see that too. And that was something that was brought up. But it was interesting as I was getting into the comment section on some of these articles, the different statements that were brought up, that there's been a tapering off for years in the quality of recruits. And I'm just going to be blatantly honest. There are always going to be exceptions to the rule. There are always going to be incredibly focused, dedicated people who join the military. But more and more, a lot of these young recruits are having discipline issues. They're having, I just have to say, almost like reality check issues. It's like you join the military. You have to be there when you have to be there. There's no excuses. It doesn't matter if you're sick. You go to formation and then you go to sick call or whatever. Like there is policies and procedures for everything. And you knew that when you signed up. You joined the military. But I can't even begin to tell you how many times um, stupid stuff has hit leadership that I've become aware of. Individuals who just didn't feel like coming into work. You're in the military. That's not an option. Get your tushy into work. You're doing a job for a reason. Or they'll come in and they'll just spend their whole time playing on their cell phones. Or they will know how to use a tablet or a cell phone, but they are incapable of using computer systems. And so they just won't even try to learn the computer systems. And it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem in the military. It's becoming more frequent. Um, and I feel like that is been a shift in the last few years. So honestly, in the comment section that I was seeing, there was lots of comments about how, you know what, a lot of these people are going to wash out anyway. Don't worry about it. If they can get that high of an ASVAB, then they're better off than so and so that I know. One individual pointed out that his bunkmate in basic was complaining that it took him like 3 or 4 times to get like the minimum score on the ASVAB, and he had graduated high school. Someone else was saying that they knew somebody who got into the military. They'd graduated high school or had a GED or whatever, and still didn't know how to read at like a high school level, and were struggling to do a basic job in the military because they didn't have the education that they were supposed to have had because they had the diploma, and but they still got in. And so I mean, as I pointed out with my one family member who was an exception to policy, and ended up finding a lot of success in the military. Why is just as important as did they? Because there are people who I have ran into that I wonder if they got their diploma out of a cereal box or something. Because it's just like, Kate, don't you have any common sense or reasoning capabilities or any of that? So, and the comment section was hysterical. It was like, if they can pass the ASVAB, they'll be fine. Um, and like, honestly, one of the points that was made in the article was individuals who have non-supportive family and are like homeless teenagers all by themselves, basically abandoned teenagers. And my issue is like, dude, where's the family? Like, we need, yeah, those kids, I can kind of see why they'd want the military. They want that structure, that sense of belonging, because they don't have that. Um, and so maybe they would appreciate it more than some of the other individuals I've encountered who haven't. But anyway, that is basically my take on this. I hope that the whole recruiting thing turns around. I think like I feel like one of the concerns is the aimlessness of the military. We don't have a clear and present danger. We don't have a clear cut objective. And I know I'm going to just keep praising Top Gun Maverick, but when you do something right, you do something right and you deserve the recognition. And one of the things that Top Gun Maverick did right is they pointed out that we never know when those clear and present dangers to our freedom and our civilian population are going to arise. And they can arise in a moment's notice. And we need people who are prepared, who are dedicated, and who have that sense of duty and honor already in place when those moments happen. Because when those moments happen, it's too late to recruit and train them. We need people on the ground, ready to hit the ground running and ready to do their job. And that, I think, was one of the clear-cut messages of Top Gun Maverick, is we need people who are ready to go when duty calls. We don't need to start looking for them when that happens. And I feel like that's kind of what happened with September 11th. We were kind of like, it was kind of like with World War II. We were sleeping giants. We'd kind of been lulled into a false sense of security. And we had to kind of hit the ground running, and we weren't ready to do that. And so it's better to be consistently prepared to hit the ground running, regardless of what the world environment looks like, because that can change on the turn of a dime. So that is my 10 cents, more than a penny. Inflation. Anyway, that's my my take on the whole recruitment situation right now with the military. I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you have been listening to Life of a Military Wife.